Hello YouTube, this is Mahadeva, the OG Thunder Wizard, and I want to talk to you about the Arudha Lagna in Vedic astrology. So, if you go to courses.thunderwizard.com, you can see my link to my astrology page, and you can also, if you still want to, you can get the lockdown package, lockdown.thunderwizard.com, if you want to train in Vedic astrology and get a Vedic astrology certification from me. And if you pass the certification, I'll put you on my website. So you can see I've got apprentices there. So the Arudha Lagna is an extremely important part of Vedic astrology. Vedic astrology is the astrology of India. Very briefly, Western astrology, the kind of astrology you open up in the newspaper and it looks at your sun sign just solely based on your date of birth. That was brought over to Europe from Greek wise men who traveled to what is now Afghanistan and learned astrology from them. The East Indians also learned that basic style of astrology, the 12 houses and the 12 signs and the 7 visible planets plus the 2 nodes. They traveled to that same country in what is now Afghanistan and learned astrology, and they brought it back, and that is called Vedic astrology. Vedic astrology, so there's a lot of things that are going to be the same. There's some differences. Short, just to get to the point, Western astrology, unfortunately, is an inaccurate calculation of the sky. So even if they look at your chart and say you're a this and you're a that, and it may be 100% accurate, the problem is if the calculation is off, which is by 24 degrees, then your chart's going to be totally different. Your houses, your planets may be in different signs and houses. So Vedic astrology uses the accurate looking up at the sky and taking the actual sky measurements straight down as they hit the earth. And that's what Vedic astrology uses. Vedic astrology has this thing called the Arudha Lagna. So the Arudha Lagna means, loosely translated, the false reflection of the self. And the idea is that you walk around with this experience of yourself, but the world sees you completely differently. If you want to be successful in the world, you have to know what your false reflection is, and you have to dress up in that costume and act that way and interact with people that way on a public level, and then you will be successful. If you don't, and some people like me, they actually don't feel like they're Arudha a lot of the times and they fight with it. People who try and fight with their reflection end up sabotaging themselves. And so if you're one of those people that no matter how hard I really try and show people what a great person I am, no matter what I'm doing, it just seems I can't get anywhere in life. Well, it's very possible that you might be fighting with your false reflection, because we are here on this planet, which is an illusion. It's not a completely false illusion. We are in a reality. It is a reality, and in this reality, there's an illusion here. So there's all kinds of things that are illusory, and we have to play our part. We have a karmic duty to wear the costume and play the character that we've been cast as. I'm sorry if you don't like that, that's just the way it is. If you play your character that you've been given, number one, you're going to be tapping into past life positive karmic powers and skills and good things that you have brought with you from previous lives that are sort of like a reflection. You know, they're sort of like a ghost you're bringing over from a past life of some good things that will not only bring you success, but will bring you positive lessons in your life. If you don't wear your costume for the performance, then you're going to get horrible reviews, right? Imagine going to a play and you're going to go see Macbeth, and the guy who's playing Macbeth decides that he doesn't want to wear the costume and he doesn't want to say his lines, and so everybody else is saying their lines, and he shows up and says, you know what, today I drove my car and my computer's giving me a hard time. I'm sorry, I don't want to do the lines, I've got other things I want to talk about. People are going to start booing and throwing onions and potatoes and rotten fruit at them. And that's what it's like when you show up for your life and you don't wear your costume out in public and you don't play your part. If you do play your part, people stand up and clap and they throw flowers at you, and they'll want to give you money. You'll be successful at your job. And in many cases, it will tell you what your job should be. So the only way to know that for sure is to have an accurate reading of your Vedic astrological chart. So what I'm going to share with you about the Arudha Lagna today is, what do you do? How do you determine if you're one of those people like me who has this difficulty, who has this internal block towards putting on that costume and being what you're destined, the part you're destined to play that will bring you success? Some people, when I share with them what their Arudha is, they go, "Oh yeah, that I totally feel like that. I've been doing that my whole life." Some charts, it's already sort of natural. The 10th house is the natural Arudha, and it shows your face to the public in the work environment. And some people, their Arudha is the 10th house, and it's something that they align with very easily. Some people like me, it's a challenge. So there's a way to figure out whether or not it's a challenge for you. And the reason why you need to figure this out is because if your Arudha is something that is very different from how you feel about yourself, the good news is you don't have to make yourself feel that way. So let's say yours is the conquering king, but your self, based on your moon sign and your rising sign, is the withering wallflower, the sensitive wallflower. Well, you walk around feeling like this sensitive wallflower, but even though you feel that way, when you walk into the room, people see you as this conquering king. Now, you may think that's bad. I don't want to put my ego out there. I don't want to act like this big conquering, butthole. I'm this very kind, sweet person. Well, that's going to be a problem because people are already programmed to accept you and like you as the conquering king. But if you go walking around like a wallflower, people aren't going to trust you. They're going to think there's something that you're hiding. They're going to think you're being inauthentic, when in reality you're trying to be authentic. And so it may be really challenging I don't want to pretend to be something I'm not. But the good news is you can still feel, for instance, you're the conquering king, you could still feel very insecure and frightened and nobody's going to love me. You can have that feeling as much as you want and accept that feeling and just simply act like the king, and people will stand up and clap and come over and want to hire you. In other words, you don't have to feel like something for it to work. Again, like acting. I was an actor for a while. And a lot of actors were so insecure if they didn't feel all of the emotions. Like, if you had a scene where you had to cry, or, a sad scene and people wanted to make themselves cry. And, you can't do that all the time. You could tell that they didn't believe what they were saying and they were really insecure, and that's called bad acting. Bad acting is when you can see that the person doesn't believe what they're saying. That's different from just showing up and saying, I don't feel like crying today, but you know what? I'm just going to say my lines and I'm going to be there in the moment, and if the tears come, they come, and if they don't. And I know, having been an actor, there have been times when the tears are flowing and the performance has been okay, and I think I'm fabulous, but it was just okay. And then there are times when I just don't feel it, and I just show up and I express the sadness without having to force myself to cry, and then the audience is weeping because it's not about me. The thing about your performance is that you show up, you commit to your part, however you feel is however you feel, but you commit to your part, you say your lines, you hit your mark, you wear your costume. And the writing and the directing and the lighting and the costume and the dialogue, all of that is going to do the work for you. There's a very famous interchange between Michael Keaton and the guy who was playing the Joker. I forget his name. You know who I'm talking about. Michael Keaton shows up and they're all dressed up and he's completely covered in the costume. And this is when the Joker guy who plays the Joker says, "Now it's time for the costume to do all the acting." And he's absolutely right. The costume, well, all the Joker makeup and all that did all the work for him. He didn't have to do any work. Your Arudha is going to do all of the work for Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson said to him, "It's time just to let the costume and the makeup do all the acting for us." And it's totally true. And your Arudha will do the job for you. Just accept that people will see you that way and they'll want to see you that way. Even if your Arudha is something bad, like you're the con man. There's an Arudha that, certain, if you got Rahu in, say, Scorpio in the, then you're going to end up coming across as the black magician. And you may not want to come across as the black magician. Well, people are going to see you as a black magician. If you walk in the room and say, "I'm really a nice guy," people are going to say, there's something about it, I don't trust you. But if you walk in and you say, "That's right, you better be careful, I'm a black magician," people are going to go, "That guy's such a character," and they're going to want to throw money at you. So there's a way to see in your chart whether or not your Arudha is a challenge for you or whether it's something that you can easily slip into. So I'm going to use my chart so you can see how to do that. Now, I'm one of those people that I had some challenge with mine, and it took me a while to get over my false humility, because when you struggle with your Arudha, you think you're being humble when in reality it's false humility. It's actually pride. True humility is to say, "Yes, I am. I'm an expert at this, and I'm good at that, and this is who I am, and I'm amazing in these ways." That is true humility. Saying, "Oh, no, no, that's false humility, and nobody likes that." All right, so let me bring up my chart here so you can see it. Okay, so now you're going to want to look at the. Let me get myself situated here. You're going to want to look at the square on the left. If you're not familiar with Vedic astrology, you're going to want to look at the square on the left with all those diamonds in it. And if you look at the top diamond, you'll see the number 5 in there. Now that is the first house. Even though the number is 5, that is the first house because 5 is the sign of Leo. And it goes counterclockwise. So you see the number 6 up and to the left of that. That's the second house. And then you see 7, that's the third house. So you can see as the numbers increase, that's the direction to go. The house that's in the middle there, regardless of what number it is, that is the first house. But the number is going to show you the sign. So, okay, does that make sense? I won't belabor that. But don't worry about the second one on the right, which says D9 in the little blue spot in the middle. That's a different chart. Don't have to worry about that for right now. So you look at the D1, which is the one on the left, and we look at the ascendant, which is the first house. So you see it's 5, which is Leo. And you can see that there is letters there, MO, that means moon. Don't worry about the UR and the PL, that's Uranus and Pluto. We don't deal with those planets in Vedic astrology because those are generational. Meaning that there are people, for 20 years, Uranus and Pluto is going to be in Leo. So it's not a big deal. It's not a huge shift. That's something that each generation goes through. So you look at the moon in Leo. Okay, that's interesting. Moon in Leo. That means that my essence is to be the nurturing king. So Leo is the king. Moon is a nurturer. It means that I care about everybody. You may not know that. You may think I'm, I hate everybody the way that I deal with some people. But that's my Arudha. That's not my true self. So my true self is Moon in Leo. Now, we look at the sign, which is Leo, number 5, and you go and you see what is the dignity, what is the strength of the sun. So if you look in the second house, you'll see sun is in the second house in Virgo. Now that's not necessarily a hugely powerful place for the sun, but if you notice also, you'll see 0 degrees. Sun is at 0 degrees, so that's called Sankranti, which means that sun is has just changed signs. So it has just come from Leo and it has just now stepped into Virgo. So it's Sankranti, when the sun is changing signs, it's actually seen as a curse. So it's the curse of the sun. So that's not good. That means that my sun, even though my sign is Leo, the sun that is lording over that isn't very strong. So that means my ego. I have challenges with my ego. You guys have seen that. So technically my sun is debilitated because of that. Now if we look at the moon, you can't see that here in this screenshot, but my moon is also having challenges because I was born during the new moon. So my sun and my moon are both challenged. So that means that even though sun is happy in Leo, number one, Leo isn't shining very brightly on it, and number two, it's in a new moon, so that's technically the curse of the moon. So I've got these two things really going against me. So those of you who see me now, I'm very outspoken, but when I was a kid, I was really shy. In fact, my first day at school in kindergarten, I didn't say a word because I was so shy. It's definitely not my sign. It's the debilitation of the sun and the moon based on that. Now, these things get better over time. As you can see, I don't have any problem telling anybody exactly what I think. But that's me. So that means that my experience of myself is of this very sensitive person who has who feels really, a lot of self-confidence issues. Right? So that means that's my experience of myself. If I go to my true self, that's my experience of myself. So now we go take a look at the Arudha. So in order to find the Arudha, we look at the sign of the first house, which is Leo, and the planet that is lording over that is Sun. We count how many houses away is the Sun. In this case, it's real easy. The Sun is only 2 houses away. So we count 1, 2 because we count inclusively from the house. So from the first to the second is 2 houses. So we count that same amount of houses from the planet in question once again. So since the sun is 2 houses away from the ascendant, we count 2 houses from the sun, including itself, which would be number 2 and number 3. So we get to the 3rd house. That's my Arudha. So when I walk in the room, what people see is Mars in Libra. So once again, we need to look and see the difference between that. So just looking at that, right off the bat, we see a difference in the signs and the planets. So Leo is a fire sign. It's, on its own is very much, look at me, I'm the king. Libra is Venus, which is more of a cooperative sign. In fact, Libra is the sign of cooperation. And the balance, the scales of Libra is not the scales of justice, it's the scale of the fair balance. So Libra wants to be in among people because this is the 7th house is where the 7th sign naturally resides. And it wants to bring balance, so it brings this humility and this cooperation and everybody getting what they want. Now the king is not interested in everybody getting what they want. The king, which is Leo, says, no, I'm the king. I get all this, I get all the glory. I will be a good king and deign to do this. So here you got a clash, number 1. Number 2, you've got the moon in Leo, which is all about nurturing and caring and love and mothering and all that kind of stuff. And the planet in my Arudha is Mars, which is the opposite of that. Mars is conquering, it's destroying, it's very, just out there and in your face. So right there off the bat, you can see there's this challenge. So that means, bottom line is that I'm going to have a challenge when it comes to going out in public and being this nurturing warrior, or this warrior of protection, this warrior of balance. Because what I want to do is I want to be the cranky, because my moon is debilitated and my sun is debilitated. I want to be this cranky, super sensitive, caring wallflower type. That's my internal essence. but my Arudha is something completely opposite that. So that means it's going to take some time and real effort, and I have to get over my false humility in order to show up, puff my chest out, flex my arms, and and third house is also in your face. Mars in third house means I'm in your face telling you where you screwed up and where you need, and as you can see, I do that on my channel. For those of you, if you think that's how I am in real life, I'm not. It doesn't mean that I don't do it easily. It is part of my nature, but that's my Arudha. So when I'm on the channel, I let it fly. And that's where I'm going to be most helpful. That's my strength, and that's where I'm going to be most successful. Okay? So if you are wanting to know if your Arudha is something that you can do easily or if it's a challenge, this is what you do. You look to see the sign that your ascendant is. When you find your Arudha, see how the sign of your ascendant and the sign of your Arudha, do they get along? If they're opposite or if they're different, you're going to have some false humility to get through. Now, if you have planets in them, sometimes you won't have a planet in your ascendant and or your Arudha, but if you have planets in them, then you want to compare the planets. See how do the planets align? Mars and Moon couldn't get a whole lot more opposite than that. And then, of course, then you want to look at the strengths of each of these planets and the planets that are lording over the signs. And as I went through, you saw. You can see how this is going to play out. So if it's the opposite, and let's say you've got Aries as an ascendant, and you have Leo and you've got a strong Leo, and you've got Leo, then it's going to go well together. They're both fire signs. If you've got Cancer as an ascendant, and you've got Venus, in Taurus as an Arudha, then it's gonna go fairly easily. So that's some things to look at. There you go. All right, I gotta stop this and do my job. 90-day challenge. Go check it out. Go do the 90-day challenge with me. I guarantee you, if you do this every single day, at least just try it for 30 days. I guarantee you your whole life will transform. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you guys later, and we'll talk more about Arudha coming up soon.